Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like anything else. It's like eBay. You know, you go on eBay. I look for the buy nows. I can't take the stress of an auction. I mean, I know it's a digital auction, but still, I picture all the people out there, and I picture a guy wearing an eBay costume on the podium with the little thing saying, okay, I see, $400. Do we see 450? And I kind of go through that in my head, but and that can make for a more stressful shopping experience as opposed to something like Amazon or whatever. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com, and today I'm going to show you another amazing tool by an incredible Microsoft resource, Merill Fernando, and this is a tool that will help you visualize your conditional access policies, which is great for presenting to teams or if you're a consultant, showing your customers. It's absolutely going to blow you away. Well, you're the one who brought it up. I mean, I've done it. I'll do eBay, but it all depends on but it all depends. You can also order from like Target.com.
GetRubix, solving for the modern workplace.
Okay, so let's start by looking at our conditional access policies. What do we have here? View all policies. Let's see what we have. So generally, folks have several conditional access policies in the environment, and these will affect things way beyond Intune. To be completely honest, it's difficult to understand their impact. This is a problem for a few reasons. For me, it's a problem when I start working with an organization that has very messy conditional access policies. And they don't really, maybe they were built over time by several resources. Perhaps there's a lot of crossover between different policies. Maybe some things are trying to do what another policy is already doing. It can get kind of messy. But I think what's worse is if these policies are on, they can have tremendous impact to the environment. Generally, when I'm troubleshooting an issue, maybe it's related to device enrollment or autopilot, or an identity can't authenticate into a resource, 9 out of 10 times it's conditional access. But when you go to look at the conditional access policy, not only is it hard to understand which policy is causing the problem, most organizations don't have a strong design documentation for their conditional access policies. So how do you start tearing through this? And then how do you present that to folks when it's time to make change? So the good news here is if you don't already follow Merill, you are doing yourself just a crazy disservice. Merill is a product manager at Microsoft, specifically on Entra, and creates amazing tools all around. Great person. His tools have saved me on more than one occasion. So today we're specifically going to look at the Conditional Access Documenter. So it's available here. I'll put the link below. We're going to hit try it out, and you can sign in to generate documentation. So the way this works is it authenticates to your, let's just run it. I'll show you. So we're going to click sign in, and you're going to be prompted to authenticate. So I'm going to do my dev tenant. And it does have you authenticate, and you have to grant the app permissions. I've already done that. If you haven't, it's going to prompt you to, and that's it. It basically reads what's in your tenant. So I'm going to hit generate documentation now that I'm authenticated. And you can see I'm authenticated up here on the right. Okay, it just generated a PowerPoint file for me. I'm going to click open. Let's see what's inside. Okay, so I wanted to keep something in mind. I didn't make this. It came from the tool. The tool made this PowerPoint, right? So keep that in mind as you look at what I'm about to show you. And granted, I don't have a ton of conditional access policies in here, but let's start looking. So the report, if you look on the left, it's grouped into enabled policies, report only, and disabled. So my enabled policies, let's take a look at. So check it out. The first one is including one set of users. In this case, it's just Dustin. It's protecting access to Intune. It's protecting access to all my apps, but excluding Intune and Intune enrollment. And the grant is multi-factor authentication. You can see here, I don't have any additional requirements configured. This is strictly for MFA. But let's go to another policy. This one's a little bit more complex. So this is including a group for Windows MAM and one individual user. And the grant says it needs an app protection policy to access all my Office applications, right? So that's all I'm protecting. Now, what are my other conditions? It's only for Windows. It's only for the browser client apps, and I'm filtering for compliant devices. This is very easy to understand as we're looking through this, and it almost shows you visually where any potential bottlenecks will be. When I go to report only, I can see the same thing. I can just see that, they're in that report only mode, so it's not something you have to worry about. But take a look at this. So this is related to, this is a policy I have related to my cloud app security group. So I'm targeting a group, right? The other thing to understand too is it'll show you how many members are part of that group, right? So with the Windows Man group, there were 4. With the CASB group, there are 3, right? And it shows here, I don't have any specific grant controls, but I do have session controls, right? So for all my platforms, if you're in this group accessing Office, right, you can't download anything because of the conditional access app control. And we have a 2-day sign-in frequency. So for those of you starting to implement CASB, this is super helpful to see the conditional access that goes along with it. As you can see, as I go through disabled policies, right, just kind of big red there, so I know they're disabled, but you can definitely see the impact very easily. This is something that's blocking access to everything, except for this particular group here and myself. And that is also have a filter. This also has a filter for compliant devices. Here's another compliance policy, right? And it's looking at Windows and Mac. And the grant controls involve 2 things, multi-factor and compliance. And this will do even if they're non-standard apps. For example, I have a conditional policy protecting one of my SMB file shares that's connected through the Entra proxy, and for this, excluding myself, I require MFA or a compliant device. Notice the require one up here specifies that this is one or the other, as opposed to if that's not there, let's go back up here. If there weren't 2 selections, it would be all, right? Do I have another example of that? I don't, but that's how you can tell if it's only requiring 1 out of the 2. So all in all, I'm getting all the information I would get from the policy, but it's way easier to digest from a visual standpoint. This is one that's preventing offline autopilot devices. So basically, we used this back when folks were still using the JSON in like a task sequence to put devices in autopilot. This was the policy we used to block it. So you can see here for all users, if it was a Windows device and the enrollment profile name was offline autopilot profile, we were blocking it from everything. But this is like 1,000% easier to read than prevent offline autopilot, because then I have to look at this and think, okay, what was I doing? I had 2 conditions. I have to click. I have to look at those conditions. I have to look. I was blocking access. What are my resources? So there's a lot of work that has to be done and kind of playing detective to figure out what you set up versus just seeing this laid out in front of you. Like I said, an amazing tool, and I know a lot of folks are using it, but for those of you who don't know about it, hopefully I drew your attention to it, because this is one of those that if you're managing an Intune in a Microsoft 365 environment, if you work with conditional access policies, or you work with a lot of customers and you have to sort out their conditional access policies, there's nothing better than this to get started, because it just makes it so easy for you to look at the visuals, tell a story, and most of the times folks will look at them and go, oh, I see what the problem is now that it's been laid out. So thanks to Merill for putting out, just incredible content resources for us, and especially this tool. We'll be seeing you.